everyone. Today we are going to take chapter 2 of History class 9th, that is Socialism in Europe and the Russian Revolution. Dear students, this lesson throws light on the coming of socialism in Europe and the dramatic events that forced the ruling monarch Tsar Nicholas II to give up power. One can see how the ideals of socialism brought the Russian Revolution. Students, we will learn about the age of social change now. The French Revolution opened up the possibility of creating a dramatic change in the society. People were conservatives, liberals, and radicals. Let us know about the ideology of liberals first. Liberals wanted a nation which tolerated all religion. They were against the uncontrolled power of the dynastic rulers. They wanted rights for the individuals. They argued for an elected parliamentary government subject to laws interpreted by a well-trained judiciary that was independent of the rulers and the officials. They were not democrats, but because they did not believe in universal adult franchise. Students, let us learn about the ideology of radicals, how they wanted to bring in a change in society. Liberals wanted a nation in which government was based on the majority of countries' population. They dislike concentration of power in hands of a few, not the existence of private property. Let's learn about the ideology of conservatives, how they wanted to bring in change in the society now. Conservatives, they resisted changes. After the revolution, they started accepting changes, provided it was slow and had links and respect the past. Industrial and social change, this is a new topic now. It was also the beginning of industrial revolution. Men, women and children were pushed into factories for low wages. Liberals and radicals who were factory owners felt that efforts must be encouraged so that benefits of industrialization should be passed on the workers. Now students, we have learned about the ideology of liberals, radicals and conservatives. We have even seen that what change industrial revolution had brought in Russia. Now we will see one more ideology, that is socialism, as this ideology was gaining popularity in Europe more than any other ideology. Socialists had different visions of the future. Like we have Robert Owen, he sought to build a cooperative community called New Harmony in Indiana, that is in USA. In France, Louis Blanc wanted the government to encourage cooperatives and replace capitalist enterprises. Dear students, socialists were against private property and saw it as the root of social evils. Marx believed that a socialist society would free the workers from capitalism. We are talking about Karl Marx. This would be the communist society. Robert Owen, Louis Blanc, Karl Marx, Friedrich Engels. Support for socialism. Socialists formed an organization called Second International to spread the socialist ideas. Workers in Germany and England began forming associations to fight for better living conditions. They set up funds for members in distress, reduction of working hours and the right to vote. SDP, that is the Social Democratic Party, Labour Party was formed in Britain and Socialist Party in France. Now industrial and social changes. It was also the beginning of industrial revolution. Men, women and children were pushed into factories for low wages. Now students, we will learn about the Russian Revolution and we will see how socialism ideology have influenced the people to bring in change there. Students, now we will learn about the economy and society of Russia. Russian population, about 85% were an agriculturalist. Industries were beginning to set up, which was the most private property of industrialists. Workers were divided into groups, but they did unite to strike work when they were dissatisfied. Peasants had no respect for nobility, very unlike the French peasants. Russian peasants were the only peasants community which pooled their land and their commune divided it. Now socialism in Russia, how it came? All political parties were illegal in Russia before 1914. The Russian Socialist Democratic Labour Party was formed in 1898. It struggled to give peasants their right over land that belonged to nobles. As land was divided among peasants periodically, which makes them natural socialists, and not workers would be the main source of the revolution. But Lenin did not agree with this, as he felt that peasants were not one social group. The party was divided into Bolsheviks and Mensheviks. The 1905 revolution, we are learning about how it came. Russia was an autocracy. The Tsar was not subject to the parliament. Liberals wanted to end this state of affairs. They worked towards demanding a constitution during a revolution of 1905. Student, now this Bloody Sunday event happened in Russia. Let's learn about this. Prices of essential goods rose so quickly by 1904 that the real wages declined by 20%. During this time, 4 members of the Petrolov Iron Works were dismissed. The action was called for now. Over 110,000 workers in St. Petersburg went on strike, demanding a reduction in working hours and increases in wages. The procession was led by Father Gepin. This procession was attacked by the police and the Cossacks. Over 100 workers were killed. Strikes took place as a reaction. People demanded a constituent assembly. The Tsar allowed the creation of an elected consultative parliament or Duma. The Tsar dismissed the first Duma within 75 days and announced the election of second Duma. The First World War and the Russian Empire we are learning about now. In Russia, the war was initially very popular, but later the support grew thin. Anti-German sentiments ran very high. Russian armies lost badly in Germany and Austria. There were 7 million casualties and 3 million refugees in Russia during war period. The war also affected industry, like there was a labor shortage, railway line was shut down and small workshops were closed down. There was the shortage of grain and hence of bread. The February Revolution in Petrograd, now we are learning about the revolution that happened in February in Russia. Now the events went like this. For February Revolution, the winter of 1917 Petrograd was grim. There was the food shortage in the workers' quarters. Dear students, on 22nd February, a lockout took place at a factory. Workers of 50 other factories joined in sympathy. Women also led and participated in the strikes. This came to be called the International Women's Day. The government imposed a curfew as the quarters of fashionable area and the official buildings were surrounded by workers. On the 24th and 25th, the government called out the cavalry and police to keep an eye on them. On 25th February, the government suspended the Duma and politicians spoke against this measure. The people were out with force once again. On 27th, police headquarters were ransacked. Cavalry was called out again. However, it refused to fire on demonstrators. Dear student, an officer was shot at the barracks of a regiment and other regiments mutinied. Voting to join the striking workers gathered to form a Soviet or council. This was the Petrograd Soviet. A delegation went to meet the Tsar. Military commanders advised him to abdicate. The Tsar finally abdicated. On 2nd March, a provisional government was formed by the Soviet and Duma leaders to run the country. The people involved were the parliamentarians, workers, women workers, soldiers and military commanders. Now let us see the effects of February Revolution. Restriction on public meetings and association were removed. Soviets were set up everywhere. In individual areas, Factory committees were formed which began questioning the way industrialists ran their factories. Soldier committees were formed in the army. The provisional government saw its power declining and Bolshevik influence grew. It decided to take the stern measure against the spreading discontent. It resisted attempts by workers to run factories and arrest leaders. Dear students, peasants and the socialist revolutionary leaders pressed for a redistribution of land. Land committees were formed and peasants seized land between July and September 1917. Dear students, after the February Revolution, October Revolution happened in Russia. On 16th October 1917, Lenin persuaded the Petrograd Soviet and the Bolshevik Party to agree to a socialist seizure of power. A military revolutionary committee was appointed by the Soviet to organize seizure. Uprising began on 24th October. Prime Minister Kerensky left the city to summon troops. Military men, loyal to the government, seized the building of 2 Bolshevik newspapers. Pro-government troops were sent to take over telephone and telegraph offices and protect the Winter Palace. In response, Military Revolutionary Committee ordered to seize the government offices and arrest the ministers. The Aurora ship shelled the Winter Palace. Other ships took over the strategic points. By night, the city had been taken over and the minister had surrendered. All Russian Congress of Soviets in Petrograd approved the Bolshevik action. Heavy fighting in Moscow. By December, the Bolsheviks controlled the Moscow-Petrograd area. Now, effects of this October Revolution. Most industry and banks were nationalized in November 1917. The land was declared social property and the peasants were allowed to seize the lands of nobility. Use of old aristocratic titles were banned. New uniforms were designed for the army and the officials. Russia became the one-party state. Trade unions were kept under party control. A process of centralized planning was introduced. This led to the economic growth. Industrial production increased. An extended schooling system developed. Collectivization of farms started. Students, now we will learn about the civil war that happened in Russia after the revolution. When the Bolsheviks ordered land redistribution, the Russian army began to break up. Non-Bolshevik socialist liberals and supporters of the autocracy condemned the Bolsheviks' uprising. They formed their troops and were called Greens, which would fight against Bolshevik Red. The pro-Tsar Whites controlled most of Russian Empire. They were supported by French, Americans, British and Japanese troops. All these fought a war with the Bolsheviks, making a socialist society. The Bolshevik kept industries and banks nationalized during the Civil War. A process of centralized planning was introduced. Rapid construction and industrialization started. An extended schooling system developed. Now we will learn about Stalin and his collectivization farming. Stalin believed that rich peasants and traders stocked supplies to create the shortage of grains. Hence, collectivization was the need of the hour. This system would also help to modernize farms. Those farmers who resisted collectivization were punished, deported or exiled. Now we will see the global influence of the Russian Revolution. By the 1950s, it was recognized in the country and outside that everything was not in keeping with the ideals of Russian Revolution. Though its industries and agriculture had developed and the poor were being fed, the essential freedom to its citizens was being denied. However, it was recognized that social ideals still enjoyed respect among the Russians. But in each country, the ideas of socialism were rethought in a variety of different ways. So that's all for today, students. We are done with the chapter. Hope to meet you in the next session with a new chapter. Thank you all.